Hi, and thanks for tuning in today. This is Regina with Morale Fiber, and I have a foundation Tunisian stitch, which is how to create a Tunisian foundation row without chaining first. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to go through how to do it. So first is a bit of a demo. You can see my stitches are already partially on the hook. I have 5 or 6 stitches made here, and as you can see, I'm creating a foundation Tunisian row with no chain stitch. So instead of chaining and then working back across to get my loops pulled up for the first row of a Tunisian piece, I'm going to just create those foundation Tunisian stitches all in one go. This technique is very similar to foundation single or foundation double, which you might have encountered as techniques to create a first row without doing that chain foundation first. So this is a really handy technique. I don't like working into chain stitches. Many people don't. So to start, we're just going to begin with a chain 1. So we've got our length of yarn here, and I've got my Tunisian hook, and I'm just going to chain 1 stitch. Start this foundation Tunisian row. Each Tunisian foundation stitch includes 1 chain loop here, and then 1 loop that's drawn up from that chain stitch as we're going. So I've got my 1 loop and my 1 stitch, and to make the next foundation stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into the underneath part of that chain stitch. So not the top 2 loops, but the 1 loop on the opposite side. I'm going to insert my hook there and draw up 1 loop through that loop on the bottom of the chain stitch. So now I have 2 loops on the hook. Now each Tunisian foundation stitch is a chain and a loop, so I need to finish my chain stitch here. I'm going to yarn over and draw through just 1 loop on the hook. 1 loop. So now we have a chain stitch down below and 1 loop drawn up top here. So here's our chain. There's our loop for the first stitch. Now we have a chain stitch down here and a loop for the second stitch. To make another stitch, we will repeat that process. Working into the last chain stitch made, we'll insert our hook underneath on the bottom bar of the chain stitch, not the top 2 loops, and draw up 1 loop on the hook. Now we're not done because we need 1 chain and 1 loop for each stitch. So we're going to go ahead and yarn over, draw a loop through 1 to complete our 3rd chain stitch. And since we already have a loop on the hook from completing that stitch, that's our loop for the 3rd stitch. And we're going to repeat this process for as many stitches as you need for your foundation row. And as you continue your row with these foundation Tunisian stitches, it can be a little easy to lose track of where you're at. So let's take a look at what these stitches look like on the hook. As you can see, I've got a partially completed 4th stitch on the hook, the one closest to my left hand. Here's my first 3 completed stitches. And I've got this one, looks like it's missing something. And one of my favorite knitting books describes knitting stitches, these are Tunisian, but it's very similar, as having knit stitches have these little scarves on the bottom. See, they kind of look like they have an extra little thing wrapped around them, and my favorite book calls those scarves. So as you can see, our 4th stitch doesn't have a scarf. It needs a scarf. We're going to yarn over and draw through another loop. And now it looks like the other stitches. It has that extra little wrap. It's got its scarf. It's happy and it's good to go. And that's just a little trick I use in case I get stuck in the middle of a row of foundation Tunisian and I can't figure out if I've completed my stitch yet. It's just a handy trick. See our little 5th stitch here. Another trick I use is I keep my finger above the line of completed stitches on my hook. I use my finger, my index finger, on my dominant hand to control my Tunisian stitches anyway. So this is a good way to keep track. As soon as the stitch is done, I move that completed loop back behind my finger. And that way I know as I'm sailing along here crocheting that the ones behind my finger are done. I don't need to mess with those anymore. Here's my foundation Tunisian stitches that I've got so far on the hook. I've got 9 stitches, and you can do as many as the pattern calls for adding length or for making your first row of Tunisian stitches. I'm going to go ahead and make a few more stitches here at full speed. Check out what my left hand is doing here. I'm using my middle finger and thumb to, as I'm making these stitches, I'm sort of grasping and trapping that back loop on the chain stitch. And that makes it a lot easier. It controls the tension on that back loop a little bit more and keeps it looser. So it's a lot easier to stick your hook in there to that back loop when you're done. Here I'm just counting stitches. And that's just another little trick I like, and just keep my fingers on those back loops to help keep a pathway open for my hook. Now that I'm done with my little row, as you can see, it looks really pretty. There's a nice textured on the bottom, and it does help control curling just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and work back across my row with the return pass in the normal way. Here I am just working all those loops right back off the hook in Tunisian simple stitch. And here's my first row of foundation Tunisian simple stitch. I hope you really like this trick. It's one of my favorites. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I am going to do a few more of these Tunisian tutorials. Another nice thing about this technique is its stretchiness. It doesn't have the stiffness of a regular foundation chain row of Tunisian crochet. Here I'm just messing around, showing off a few stitches. I am going to do a couple more Tunisian tutorials, so I hope you liked this, and I hope you remember to like and subscribe, and maybe even check out some of those links I've got listed below the video. I have a ton of resources for crochet on my blog, as well as a lot of Tunisian crochet patterns. So do hope you check it out, and I hope you enjoyed this technique and will join me for more in the future.